the Fractal Woman, okay? And she made a little video in which she answered one of my videos, and she answered specifically the issue about the ether. And it's good that she did, because now we can get deeper into her train of thought, see if we can understand what she's saying. I certainly couldn't. So I'm in the same boat no matter how I look at it. You know, she hasn't answered the question. And so let me show you what she failed to answer, what she doesn't answer, what she can't answer. You know? And she never will, obviously. And here it is. Okay, let's go with the first one. She says the following. She says, the vacuum of space is not empty. Okay? It is just empty of matter, but full of ether. Okay? So she's saying that ether is not matter, whatever matter is. And we saw that, you know, they don't have a definition for matter. It turns out she's going to say that the ether is made of particle and antiparticle pairs, but she doesn't call that matter for some reason. Even though, you know, those are considered, you know, one of those is the electron, and the other one's a positron. And these are considered particles. And if they're considered particles, what is that? Isn't that matter? So we have a problem with the word matter. A serious problem, because we end up going in circles because of this word. Because people say it's empty of matter. And what did you say by that? Well, she didn't say anything with that, because she doesn't know what the word matter means. That's why. And she said vacuum is empty of matter. Again, okay? She's empty of matter, okay? So here I've got matter down at the bottom in yellow. You see the yellow ball. And I put it within space. And you have the ether there, which are the red and white or gray balls there, right? And so that's space for her. Space is that ether plus the particles of matter, whatever matter is, okay? And space is full of ether, okay? So space is full of ether and space is full of matter, okay? So what is the vacuum? Well, vacuum is the same thing as space, but empty of matter. So that's what I did at the bottom right. I removed the ball, the yellow balls, and that should be what she's saying. She's saying, look, the guy on the left is space because it has matter in it, whereas the guy on the right is just that same thing, but without the yellow balls, okay? So what is that vacuum? That vacuum seems like it's got something in it. What are those little balls, those electron-positron pairs that she's got the vacuum made up of? And so she doesn't call that matter for some reason. And again, it comes down to that word matter. So she gets away with murder there. Why? Because she's putting particles and she's saying that's nothing. That's not matter, okay? That's the problem. At least that's the first problem, okay? And we'll continue here. And say space and ether are the same thing, okay? So space and ether are the same thing, and vacuum and space are not the same thing, right? Because vacuum is space that is empty of matter. So I did it right. I removed the yellow balls, which represent matter, and we end up with what she calls vacuum. And as always, you know, we have a problem with the black stuff. We don't know what that black stuff is, and that's what I want to get to. I want to get to the bottom of that stuff. That's the one I'm targeting, okay? So I want you to understand that. And she says space is filled with electron-positron pairs, so that means she's talking about that ether, those electron-positron pairs that make up the ether, right? And which I let her generalize to vortex, anti-vortex pairs, okay? She's going to explain how she creates these little tornadoes, okay? Okay. So we have electron-positron pairs are space, okay? Because what? Electron-positron pairs are ether, and ether is space, she says. But she says, she keeps missing when she says that. She keeps missing the part about matter, because space and ether cannot be exactly the same, because ether are the red and white balls, whereas the matter are the yellow balls. And so ether and space are not the same thing if space must include matter, okay? Because she says that if we remove matter, space would not exist, because she would not have distance between objects. And again, she doesn't consider the little red and white balls there. She doesn't consider that matter. She doesn't consider that anything. I don't know what she considers that to be, especially when she says that they're electron-positron pairs, which are supposedly particles. So again, we have this problem where these people just keep running around in circles. And she says, I call space a vacuum when there are no particles of matter in that region. Okay, great. Space and ether and space in my electron-positron pair medium are the same thing. Okay, so it's very clear. Space would not exist if this medium would not exist. There she goes. She says, if the medium wasn't there, space would not exist. Okay? And again, we have a problem because we need to figure out if space is equal to the ether, which is just the red and white balls, or space includes the particles. Obviously, she means that space includes the particles. Therefore, space is not the same thing as the ether, as she says. Okay, so she's got a contradiction there she's got to resolve. Because if space is the same thing as ether, then it's the same thing as vacuum, which is what we have on the right. Vacuum is equal to the ether. And still we have no idea what the black stuff is as of this moment. She's going to get to that in a minute. So she says, so space is the medium and vacuum is when there are no particles in that medium, when space is empty, when it's got nothing in it, nothing meaning matter, because we do have something, and those something are the electron-positron pairs. Isn't that something? I mean, what is that? So this is the problem. She keeps running around in circles. She thought she answered the question. She hasn't. Okay, and she says, if all the matter disappeared in the universe and all the vortex, anti-vortex pairs disappeared from the universe, there would be no space. Yeah, so what would be? All we would have is the black stuff. And what is the black stuff? That's what we want to get to. So she hasn't yet addressed that issue. Okay, so she does address that in the next one. So let's get to the next one. She tells us what the black stuff is, and that's what I wanted to know. You know, what is this black stuff? She says, because the black stuff supposedly gives shape to the particles. That's why I want to know what the black stuff is. And she says the background for the particle is the vortex, anti-vortex C. Okay, so the black stuff there that you see is the vortex, anti-vortex C. Okay, and a part of the C of vortex, anti-vortex pairs. Okay, whatever that means. And okay, and the background for that is the BEC, the Bose-Einstein condensate. Okay. In the BEC, right, the background of the vortex anti-vortex pairs is the BEC itself. Oh, I love that one, because that means he's saying, what is the BEC? Well, if you look it up, it's a gas. That's what a BEC means. Okay, BEC is just a gas that's a very low temperature. That's all BEC means. That's the Bose-Einstein condensate. Okay, it's just a gas that's been cooled down to near absolute zero. That's all it is. And so they say it has different properties, and they call it a different state of matter. That's all it is. Okay, it's just another type of plasma, you could say, where plasma goes to the other end, it's heated up, atoms that are being ionized. Well, this is another type of experiment where you freeze the gas and you find that it's got different properties at near 0 Kelvin. Okay, so that's what the Bose-Einstein condensate is. So it's gas. And there I illustrated, I put different colors, and she says that the yellow and the green and pink one there, little balls, those are going to be the black stuff. The black stuff is made of all those little balls, and that, what she says, provides the contour to the ether, to the to the electron-positron pairs. So we've got this gas that she fills in there, and she says that gas gives the background to the electron-positron pairs that form the ether. Okay, so we're getting, I guess, to the bottom of things here, are we? I want to know what the black stuff now that contours each BEC atom, because we're talking about a gas, but I'll assume they're just particles. So what contours each one of those particles? That's what I want to know. I want to always know what the black stuff is. And she hasn't told me what the black stuff is. She's telling me the black stuff is the BEC behind the BEC. It's the same contour to the BEC. She says it there. She says the background of the vortex, anti-vortex pairs is the BEC itself. The universe began as a Bose-Einstein condensate at a very super low temperature. At absolute zero or very close to it, you get a BEC. Then as you either spin it up or warm it up, you begin to see the formation of vortex, anti-vortex pairs. So she says that she creates these tornadoes simply by having the pair run around each other. That's her idea. She says, these two pairs of balls, they go around each other, and that's in her mind, she says that's a vortex, anti-vortex pair, and that tornado, I'll just call them tornadoes because that's what she's describing, those tornadoes form the background, okay? She says she gets a BEC. Well, that's not totally true because, again, the BEC is not a tornado according to the official literature. The official literature says it's a gas, and a gas is made out of atoms. She doesn't understand that, okay? So that's her problem. Then as you either spin it up or warm it up, you begin to see the formation of vortex, anti-vortex pairs. So the background of a BEC is pure inertia. Now she says that the background is a concept. She's saying that we have this thing called inertia, which she defines as resistance to change. So she says the background is resistance. Resistance is a concept. It's like saying love is the background or intelligence is the background. What meaning can it have to say that the background of a BEC is a concept, an abstract concept, a mathematical concept? So again, she doesn't make any sense whatsoever. She never has defined what the black stuff is. She just eluded it with more nonsense that she included one right after another, saying, well, this is backed by this, and this is backed by that, and that's backed by something else. And she never tells me what the last thing is backed by. What is the thing that gives shape to the last particle? that gives shape to all the others. That's what we want to know. We want to know what the black stuff is. And as you can see, she has not answered the question. She eluded it. Okay, and so the funny part is she gets upset that I say she's not a deep thinker, and she's not. She's absolutely not. And I'm not insulting her. I'm just being factual here. She's not a deep thinker, and she should not be in physics. She should not get. She doesn't have qualifications to do physics. She should not make a fool of herself in public. So if anything, she should take my advice. Okay, that's the way I see it. Anyways, I tried to draw a picture, more specific, so that you can see her train of thought in pictures. Okay, so all that she just said, I'm going to put in pictures so that you get an idea what she's got going through her mind, or to the best of my understanding. Okay, she's got a particle. Okay, and she's going to call that matter. Okay, we'll call that matter. Okay, and that's the yellow particle. She says that matter particle is encapsulated, or the background to it, the one that gives it shape, is the ether. Okay, what's the ether? It's these electron-positron pairs. Okay, that's the ether. So I want to know what the black stuff is that gives shape to them. And so she says, oh, that's the BEC. Okay, let's go to the BEC. What's the BEC? BEC, as we know, are gases. So she says there's some kind of gas there that, when heated up, turns into a tornado. And it's all these cool tornadoes at very low temperatures that form the background. Well, the tornado is not a physical object, sorry. Okay, so we can't use the word vortex in science because it's not a standalone object. Okay, and I'll get into, in fact, maybe I should show it right now. Here it is. This is a tornado. Okay, and the one on the left is known as an ice cream cone. The one on the left is an object for the purposes of physics. The one on the right is not a physical object. You don't have a movie. You don't point to a movie and say that's a physical object. Okay, and we've gone through that the other day, and here's another version of that. The guy on the right is known as a jumping kangaroo. That is not an object for the purposes of physics. The way you present an object for the purposes of physics, you point and it's got to be static. It doesn't have to move. Okay? If it's moving, it's not an object. And what she says is that this, her vortex, she's saying the guy on the right there, she says that's a physical object. And that's not a physical object. So she doesn't understand the foundations of physics. Okay? And of course, then she says, okay, so she's got these tornadoes. Okay, and so I want to take my microscope and go and see what those little particles are. So here on the right, I'm seeing it directly. I'm saying, look, I have a BEC gas particle, and that's the one in the center. And she says, the background to that is also a BEC, another bunch of particles. Okay, so I put it in six, I enclosed it or encapsulated in 6 particles there. What's the black stuff? What gives shape to each one of the BEC gas particles? That's what we want to know. And she never answers the question. She never will. And let me tell you why, because since the days of the Greeks, they realized the problem. They said, you can't continue just saying, well, this is backed by this, and that's backed by that, and that's backed by something else. At some point, the buck has to stop. You can't keep putting objects and saying an object serves as background or contours another object. This is not like you say, you put a ball in a box and say, well, where's the ball? Well, the ball is in the box, and or in an ocean, right? You put a fish in an ocean, so you say, well, what contours the fish? The ocean. Well, what contours the ocean? What's the air? Well, what contours the air? Because the air, surrounds the Earth. And at some point, you got to reach space, and you got to address what space is, and it better not be an object, because if space is an object, then you got to tell me what contours space. And it's just going to go to infinity. What are you going to say? The 4th dimension? Is that your answer? And then you say, well, what's the 4th dimension? Well, we don't know what it is. And that's the fine print, and we're done. You can't go beyond that point. And that's the problem with mathematical physics today. They don't have an answer to what encapsulates it all. The last thing, the thing that you say encapsulates everything else, I want to know what encapsulates that. And you can't have an object. You have to at some point say, look, what encapsulates everything is nothing. What is nothing? That which doesn't have shape. We're done. And now we know what nothing is when something is, because they're opposites, they're antonyms, and we can use them consistently in a dissertation. That's the foundations of rational physics.